Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Taeguk, watching the stars streak past in brilliant lines of light. This was their first real mission with Earth's newest battleship. The Taeguk was massive, over 2 kilometers long, with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Its quantum shields could stop almost any attack, and its plasma cannons could punch through the armor of any known enemy ship. Lee had commanded ships for 20 years, but nothing like this. The Taeguk represented everything humanity had learned about space warfare. Every system was perfect, every weapon tested, every crew member trained to be the best. He felt proud to be its captain. "Captain, we're approaching the hyperspace jump." "Point," said Lieutenant Commander Park Ji-woo from the navigation station. Park was young but brilliant, one of the best navigators in the fleet. He had made this jump calculation dozens of times in the simulator. "All stations, prepare for hyperspace. Jump," Lee announced. Around the bridge, his crew moved with practiced skill. Chief Engineer Kim Sora checked the reactor readings from her station. The ship's power levels were perfect. Dr. Choi Min-ho monitored the exotic matter that made hyperspace travel possible. Everything looked normal. "Jump sequence initiated," Park called out. "Hyperspace window opening in 30 seconds. Lee watched the main screen as space began to shimmer in front of them. The hyperspace window was forming, a tear in reality that would let them travel faster than light. This particular window led to a new region of space that Earth scouts had discovered just months ago. It was supposed to be empty, perfect for testing the Taeguk's systems. 15 seconds to jump," Park announced. His voice carried a hint of excitement. This was his first time navigating a ship this advanced through hyperspace. The window fully opened, showing the swirling colors of hyperspace beyond. Lee had made hundreds of these jumps, but they never got boring. Traveling through hyperspace was like diving into a rainbow made of pure energy. "Execute jump," Lee ordered. The Taeguk moved forward into the window. Reality blurred around them as they entered hyperspace. This was the moment when normal physics stopped working and ships could travel between stars in minutes instead of years. But something was wrong. Park's console started flashing red warnings. "Captain, I'm getting strange readings. The hyperspace currents aren't matching my calculations." Dr. Choi looked up from his station, his face worried. "The exotic matter is behaving strangely. These energy patterns don't match anything in our database." Kim Sora's voice came over the comm from engineering. "Captain, the reactor is stable, but I'm seeing power fluctuations I've never seen before. It's like something is pulling energy from our systems." Lee felt his stomach tighten. In hyperspace, problems could be deadly. If something went wrong, they could be lost forever in the space between spaces. "Can we abort the jump?" Lee asked. Park's fingers flew over his controls. "I'm trying, sir, but the navigation computer isn't responding correctly. It's like the hyperspace currents are pulling us somewhere else." The main screen showed hyperspace around them, but it looked different from normal. Instead of the usual flowing colors, space seemed to be folding in on itself, creating patterns that hurt to look at. The colors were wrong too, shifting in ways that made Lee's eyes water. "Captain," Dr. Choi called out, his voice tight with worry. "The exotic matter readings are off the charts. We're encountering energy types that shouldn't exist." Suddenly, the ship shook violently. Alarms started blaring throughout the bridge. The main screen flickered and showed something impossible. The stars outside were moving in straight lines, forming geometric patterns that no natural force could create. "Emergency exit from hyperspace," Lee shouted. Park worked frantically at his controls. "I can't find a way out, sir. The normal exit procedures aren't working. It's like the rules of hyperspace have changed." The shaking got worse. Through the bridge windows, Lee could see space itself bending and twisting around them. Stars were arranging themselves into perfect mathematical shapes. Planets moved in impossible orbits that formed complex patterns. "All hands, brace for emergency exit," Lee announced over the ship's comm system. The Taeguk burst out of hyperspace like a bullet, tumbling through normal space. The crew held on as the ship's artificial gravity struggled to compensate. Emergency. Lights flashed red throughout the bridge. When the ship finally stabilized, Lee looked at the main screen and felt his blood turn cold. They were surrounded by stars, but these stars weren't like any he had ever seen. They pulsed in perfect rhythm, their light forming mathematical patterns that stretched across the entire sky. Some stars were connected by streams of energy that formed geometric shapes the size of solar systems. "Where are we?" Lee asked quietly. Park checked his instruments, his face pale. "I don't know, sir. None of these star patterns match anything in our navigation database. We could be anywhere in the galaxy or—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Or somewhere else entirely." Dr. Choi was staring at his readings in disbelief. "Captain, the laws of physics here are different. Gravity is flowing like a liquid. Energy is behaving in ways that violate everything we know about science. This place shouldn't be possible." Kim So-ra's voice came over the comm again. "Captain, our weapon systems are acting strange. The plasma cannons keep trying to fire on their own, but the targeting computer can't figure out what they're trying to shoot at." Lee studied the impossible view on the main screen. In the distance, he could see massive structures that dwarfed entire star systems. They looked like buildings made of crystal and light, but they were so huge that planets could fit inside them like tiny rooms. "Are we detecting any other ships?" Lee asked. The tactical officer, Commander Oh Sang-wook, checked his sensors. "Sir, I'm picking up something big moving toward us. It's the size of a moon, but it's not made of rock or metal. The computer says it's made of some kind of crystal, but it's alive somehow." On the main screen, they could see it approaching. The object looked like a massive flower made of crystal, each petal the size of a small country. As it moved, space around it rippled like water, and the stars nearby began to pulse in new patterns. "Should we raise shields and prepare weapons?" Oh asked. Lee thought for a moment. Every instinct told him to prepare for battle, but something about this place made him hesitate. The crystal flower wasn't moving like a weapon. It approached slowly, almost carefully, like it was trying not to frighten them. "Raise shields, but don't charge weapons yet," Lee decided. "Let's see what it wants." As the crystal entity came closer, something strange happened. Lee began to hear voices in his mind, not through his ears, but directly in his thoughts. The voices spoke in a language he didn't recognize, but somehow he understood the meaning. "Welcome, travelers from the rigid place. You have entered the confluence, where many realities touch. We are the Veiltar. Do not fear us." Lee looked around the bridge and saw that his crew was hearing the same voices. Park looked confused. Dr. Choi was taking notes frantically, and Kim So-ra was running diagnostics to see if something was affecting their brains. The crystal flower stopped a safe distance from the Taeguk. Through the mental connection, Lee could sense that it was waiting, giving them time to understand what was happening. He realized that everything they thought they knew about space, about physics, about reality itself, might be wrong. They were no longer in the universe they understood. They had arrived somewhere completely different, where the rules they lived by no longer applied, and they had no idea how to get home. The voices in Captain Lee's head continued, speaking words he understood even though they came from an alien mind. The crystal flower entity, which called itself Veiltar, was trying to communicate without frightening them. "You are confused. This is natural. Your minds work differently than ours. We will help you understand." Dr. Choi looked up from his instruments, his eyes wide with amazement. "Captain, something is changing in our brains. I'm detecting new neural pathways forming. It's like our minds are being upgraded to understand concepts that humans were never meant to comprehend." Lee felt it too. Ideas were flowing into his consciousness that he had never thought before. He could suddenly see how space was connected in ways that normal physics couldn't explain. The stars weren't just burning balls of gas. They were part of a vast living equation that stretched across the universe. Technician Lim Hai-wan, who worked in communications, suddenly spoke up. "Captain, I think I can talk back to them. The communication isn't coming through our radios. It's going directly through our minds." "Try it," Lee said. Lim closed her eyes and concentrated. After a moment, the Veiltar's mental voice changed, becoming clearer and more focused. "Good. You learn quickly. This gives us hope." "Hope for what?" Lee asked, speaking out loud but directing his thoughts toward the alien entity. "You have entered the confluence, where different universes touch each other. Each universe has different rules, different physics. Your universe believes that matter and energy follow rigid laws. Here, consciousness and reality work together. What you think and feel changes what exists around you." Kim Sora's voice came, over the comm from engineering. "Captain, you need to see this. Our reactor is producing more power than it should be able to, but it's completely stable. It's like the ship is feeding off the crew's emotions. Dr. Choi was taking readings of everything around them." "The Veiltar is right, Captain. I'm detecting that our thoughts are actually affecting local space. When crew members feel stressed, the gravity around them gets heavier. When they feel happy, the lights get brighter." Young Ensign Kang Yu-jin, who was barely 22 and new to space travel, suddenly laughed. "This is amazing! Watch this!" She focused her thoughts on the small plant she kept at her station. The plant began to grow, its leaves getting greener and larger. "Careful," Lee warned. "We don't understand what we're dealing with yet." The Veiltar's voice returned to their minds. "The young one understands instinctively. In your universe, you believe that thinking and reality are separate. Here, they are parts of the same thing. This is why your weapons keep trying to fire. Your ship's computer is designed to destroy threats, but destruction is not possible here. Energy can only be changed and moved, never destroyed." "Commander." O checked his tactical display. "Sir, the weapon systems are calming down now that we're not feeling as threatened, but I'm picking up new contacts approaching our position." On the main screen, they could see new ships moving toward them. But these ships were different from the beautiful crystal flower of the Veiltar. These ships looked like geometric nightmares. Perfect mathematical shapes that hurt to look at directly. They moved in straight lines, ignoring the gravitational pulls of nearby stars. "The Dokar come," the Veiltar warned. "They believe that the universe should follow perfect mathematical rules. They see your chaotic thoughts as a disease that must be cured. They will try to force your minds into rigid patterns." "How many ships?" Lee asked. "Oh, I count 12, sir, but they're hard to track. The computer says they exist in more dimensions than we can see. They're like looking at shadows of something much larger." Dr. Choi was studying the approaching ships with growing alarm. "Captain, these ships are violating several laws of physics at once. They're somehow existing in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Our weapons won't be able to hit them because we can only aim in 3 dimensions." The Dokar ships came closer without sending any messages or warnings. They simply began to change the space around them. Stars that had been pulsing and organic. Rhythms suddenly began burning in perfect geometric patterns. Planets that had been following curved orbits suddenly moved in straight lines, forming triangles and squares in space. "They're converting everything to mathematics," Dr. Choi whispered. "They're taking all the chaos and creativity out of this region and replacing it with cold equations." Lieutenant Commander Park was trying to plot an escape course, but his navigation computer was confused. "Sir, normal space navigation doesn't work here. The Veiltar mentioned something about probability currents. I think we have to navigate by following the flow of possibilities rather than following star maps." "This is correct," the Veiltar confirmed. "We will teach you, but first you must decide. Will you flee deeper into the confluence where you may become more lost? Or will you stand and fight, knowing that your weapons and tactics may not work against beings who exist beyond your normal reality? Lee looked around his bridge at his crew. These were Earth's best and brightest, trained to handle any crisis, but nothing had prepared them for this. They were facing enemies who existed in dimensions they couldn't even see, in a place where thinking could change reality. Captain, Sergeant Major Yoon Tae-jin's voice came over the comm. He was the leader of the ship's Marines. My people are ready to fight, but we don't understand what we're fighting against. How do you shoot an enemy that exists as a mathematical equation? Before Lee could answer, the Dokar ships opened fire. But their weapons weren't lasers or missiles. Instead, they fired pure mathematics, geometric shapes that tried to force everything they touched into rigid patterns. Where their weapons hit empty space, the vacuum itself became organized into crystal-like structures. The Taeguk's shields activated automatically, but instead of deflecting the mathematical attacks, something strange happened. The shields created small bubbles around the ship where Earth's physics still worked normally. Inside these bubbles, chaotic human thoughts and emotions could exist. Outside, everything was being converted to cold, perfect order. The shields are working, but not the way they're supposed to, Kim reported from engineering. They're creating pockets of our own reality instead of just blocking attacks. Young Ensign Kang had an idea. What if we use that? What if we expand our reality bubbles and force their ships to exist in our three-dimensional space? Then we could hit them with normal weapons. Dr. Choi's eyes lit up. That could work. If we modify the shield generators to create larger reality fields, we could trap their ships in normal physics. The Veiltar's mental voice carried approval. Yes, use your chaos against their order. Make them play by your rules instead of theirs. Lee made his decision. All hands battle stations, we're going to fight, but we're going to do it our way. Kim, work with Dr. Choi to modify the shields. Oh, prepare weapons, but wait for targets to enter our reality bubbles. Park, work with the Veiltar to learn their navigation methods. As the crew prepared for the strangest battle in human history, Lee realized that everything they thought they knew about warfare was about to change. They weren't just fighting for their lives, they were fighting to prove that human creativity and chaos could triumph over cold mathematical perfection. The Dokar ships came closer, their geometric forms shifting through dimensions that human eyes couldn't follow. But the crew of the Taeguk was ready to show them that sometimes the best answer to impossible problems was the most human response of all. Stubborn refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. The battle began unlike any fight in human history. The Dokar ships fired their mathematical weapons, sending perfect geometric shapes through space toward the Taeguk. But Captain Lee's crew was ready with their modified shields. Expanding reality. Bubble now, Chief Engineer Kim So-ra announced from engineering. The Taeguk's quantum shields stretched outward, creating a large sphere where Earth's physics worked normally. As soon as the Dokar ships entered this bubble, they suddenly became visible as solid, three-dimensional objects. I can see them now, Commander O called out from tactical. Firing plasma cannons. The Taeguk's weapons lit up space with brilliant energy beams. For the first time, human weapons struck Dokar ships. The geometric vessels, forced to exist in only 3 dimensions, took damage like any normal spacecraft. But the Dokar adapted quickly. Their ships began to incorporate chaotic elements into their perfect forms. Straight lines became slightly curved. Perfect circles developed small imperfections. They were learning to use human-style chaos against the humans themselves. They're copying our tactics, Dr. Choi observed, watching his instruments. They're adding randomness to their mathematical patterns to make them harder to predict. Lieutenant Commander Park was working closely with the Veiltar, learning their strange navigation methods. Instead of plotting courses through space, he was learning to follow currents of probability, paths through the confluence that led where they were most likely to succeed. Captain, I think I can surface along a quantum wave, Park announced. If I'm reading this right, we can ride the probability current around behind their formation. Do it, Lee ordered. The Taeguk began to move in ways that defied normal physics. Instead of using engines to push through space, the ship rode waves of possibility. They slipped through dimensions that existed between reality and imagination, appearing behind the Dokar fleet in a position that should have been impossible to reach. Sergeant Major Yoon's voice came over the comm. "Captain, request permission to launch boarding pods. If we're going to fight enemies that exist as living math, my Marines want to try getting up close and personal." Lee hesitated. Sending Marines to board enemy ships was dangerous enough when the enemies were normal aliens. These Dokar existed in 11 dimensions. "What's your plan, Sergeant Major?" "The Veil Tar have given us some special equipment, sir. Paradox grenades that create logical contradictions, and logic trap weapons that force enemies to solve impossible equations. If we can get inside their ships, we might be able to confuse them long enough to plant charges." It was crazy, but everything about this situation was crazy. "Permission granted, but be careful, Yoon. We don't know what the inside of those ships will be like." The boarding pods launched from the Taeguk, but instead of flying through normal space, they followed probability paths that led directly into the Dokar vessels. The pods simply appeared inside the enemy ships, bypassing their hull entirely. Yoon and his Marines found themselves inside geometric nightmares. The Dokar ships were filled with mathematical structures that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Corridors stretched in directions that human minds couldn't understand. The Dokar themselves appeared as living equations, beings made of pure mathematical logic. "Remember your training," Yoon told his Marines over their comm system. "Don't try to understand what you're seeing. Just follow the mission plan." The Marines began setting their paradox grenades throughout the ship. Each grenade created a logical contradiction that forced the Dokar to stop and try to solve it. A statement like, "This sentence is false," caused the mathematical beings to freeze as they tried to process the impossible logic. Meanwhile, on the Taeguk's bridge, the battle continued. Weapons specialist SEO Yunbi had discovered that their plasma cannons worked better when she stopped trying to aim them logically and instead fired based on intuition and feeling. "Don't think about where the target will be," she called out to her weapons team. "Feel where it wants to go, then shoot there." It sounded crazy, but it worked. In a place where consciousness affected reality, emotional intuition was often more accurate than mathematical calculations. Dr. Choi was making rapid adjustments to their weapons systems, learning to weaponize the interaction between different physics laws. "Captain, I'm modifying our missiles to carry reality bubbles with them. When they hit Dokar ships, they'll force sections of the enemy vessels to exist in our dimension." The tide of battle began to turn. The Dokar, despite their mathematical perfection, couldn't adapt to the chaotic creativity of human tactics. Every time they developed a logical response to one human strategy, the humans would do something completely illogical that worked anyway. Young Ensign Kong Yu-jin had taken control of one of the secondary weapons systems, instead of firing conventional weapons. She was projecting her imagination directly at enemy ships. She created cartoon-like explosions that somehow caused real damage and painted smiley faces on Dokar hulls that made their perfect geometric forms collapse into laughter. "How is that working?" Commander O asked in amazement. "In a place where thinking changes reality, happy thoughts are a weapon," Kang explained with a grin. "The Veil Tar were helping too, teaching the human crew to fight in ways they had never imagined. Instead of just destroying enemy ships, the humans learned to transform them. Dokar vessels began changing into beautiful crystal structures that forgot they were supposed to be weapons. Sergeant Major Yoon's voice came over the comm from inside the Dokar ship. "Charges set, Captain. But something strange is happening here. The Dokar aren't dying when we defeat them. They're turning into something else. I think they're learning to be less mathematical and more creative. All Marines, return to ship," Lee ordered. As the boarding pods returned, carrying Yoon and his team, the Dokar ship they had been inside began to change. Its perfect geometric form started to develop curves and artistic flourishes. The mathematical beings inside were discovering the joy of imperfection. One by one, the other Dokar ships began to change too. Instead of fighting to impose mathematical order, they started experimenting with chaos and creativity. Their weapons stopped firing rigid geometric patterns and began shooting colorful spirals and artistic designs. The battle was ending, but not with destruction. Instead, it was ending with transformation. The Dokar were learning that mathematics could be beautiful and creative, not just coldly logical. They began communicating with the humans, not through mental voices like the Veiltar, but through mathematical poems and geometric songs. "Captain," Dr. Choi announced, "the Dokar are requesting permission to join our fleet. They want to learn more about human creativity and chaos. They're offering to teach us their advanced mathematics in exchange." Lee looked around his bridge at his crew. They had won their first battle in this strange new region of space, not by destroying their enemies, but by teaching them to think differently. It was the most human victory possible. But their celebration was cut short when the ship's sensors detected something massive approaching from the edge of the system. Whatever was coming was so large that it was affecting the structure of space-time itself. Stars were being pulled out of their positions, and entire planets were being dragged along in its wake. "What is that thing?" Lee asked. Dr. Choi's face turned pale as he read his instruments. "Captain, it's bigger than anything I've ever seen. The computer estimates it's roughly the size of a solar system, but it's not made of normal matter. It's made of absence. It's a hole in reality itself." The Veiltar's mental voice returned, filled with ancient fear. "The Void Maw awakens. The devourer of realities stirs from its slumber. We had hoped it would sleep for another 1,000,000 years, but your arrival has disturbed the mathematical balance of this region." Lee realized that their real test was just beginning. They had learned to fight beings of pure mathematics, but now they faced something that was the opposite of existence itself, a creature that fed on reality and left nothing behind. The thing approaching them was not a ship, or even a creature in any normal sense. It was a wound in reality itself, a place where existence simply stopped. As it moved through space, stars didn't just go out, they ceased to have ever existed at all. The Void Maw was unmaking the universe as it traveled. Captain Lee stared at the readings on his screen, trying to understand what they were facing. How do you fight something that doesn't exist? Dr. Jung-Hyo Rin materialized on the bridge in a flash of quantum light. She was a temporal physicist from Earth who had been transported to the Taeguk through Veiltar technology. Her arrival was an emergency measure. Earth had detected the reality disturbances and sent their best expert on time and space. "Captain Lee," Dr. Young said, still disoriented from her quantum transportation, "I've been studying the data from Earth. This entity isn't just destroying things, it's erasing them from time itself. Planets that it consumes never existed. People who lived on those planets are wiped from history." The Veiltar's mental voice filled their minds with ancient sadness. "We have fought the Void Maw for millions of years across many realities. It feeds on the mathematical certainty that holds universes together. As it grows stronger, the laws of physics become weaker. Eventually, entire realities collapse into primordial chaos." Chief Engineer Kim So-ra was working frantically to understand how their technology might work against such an enemy. "Captain, our weapons are designed to destroy or transform matter and energy. But this thing is the absence of matter and energy. How do you shoot at nothing?" Dr. Choi was studying the entity through their sensors, which were giving impossible readings. "It's not entirely nothing," he reported. "There's a pattern to how it moves and consumes. It's like a mathematical virus, but instead of infecting computers, it infects reality itself." Dr. Jung began experiencing strange visions as she worked with the Veiltar technology. She could see multiple timelines at once, past, present, and future overlapping in her consciousness. Captain, I'm seeing something terrible. The Void Maw isn't just here by accident. It was drawn to this region by our arrival. Our human chaos disrupted the mathematical balance, and that disturbance woke it up. The implications were horrifying. Earth's most advanced warship had accidentally awakened an entity that could unmake entire universes. There's more, Dr. Young continued, her eyes unfocused as she processed visions from multiple timelines. I can see tendrils of dissolution reaching back toward human space. Earth's colonies are starting to experience reality failures. On some worlds, the laws of physics are just stopping for minutes at a time. Lieutenant Commander Park was monitoring communications from Earth. Captain, I'm receiving fragmentary reports from our colonies. Ships are disappearing not just from space, but from all records of their existence. It's like they never were built. The scope of the threat became clear. This wasn't just about their ship being lost in strange space. The Void Maw was working backward through time and space, following their trail back to Earth itself. Sergeant Major Yoon's voice came over the comm. Captain, my Marines are reporting something strange. Some of the crew members are starting to phase in and out of existence. They're there one moment, then gone the next, then back again. It's like reality can't decide if they exist or not. The Veiltar spoke again, their mental voice carrying desperate urgency. There is one possibility. Your species' talent for chaos and adaptation makes you uniquely suited to fight the Void Maw. Where other species become more ordered over time, humans remain unpredictable. But the cost would be enormous. What cost? Lee demanded. To fight the Void Maw, your ship and crew would need to become partially unreal yourselves. You would exist in multiple probability states simultaneously. You could fire weapons that hit targets before they are fired and defend against attacks that exist only in mathematical theory. But you would no longer be entirely human. Dr. Young's visions were becoming clearer. Captain, I can see what they mean. In the timelines where we succeed, the Taeguk becomes something new. Part ship, part living equation, part controlled paradox. The crew retains their humanity, but gains the ability to exist in multiple realities at once. Kim's voice came from engineering. Sir, I'm already seeing changes in our systems. The reactor is producing impossible amounts of energy, and our hull is becoming partially translucent. I think the process is already starting. Young Ensign Kang was at her station, but she was flickering like a bad hologram. Captain, I can feel it happening. I can see myself in different timelines. In some, I'm firing weapons. In others, I'm already dead. In others, I never existed at all. The Void Maw was getting closer, and its influence was affecting the crew more strongly. Some crew members were becoming transparent, existing only partially in normal reality. Others were experiencing multiple versions of themselves simultaneously. Commander O was trying to coordinate weapons, but his targeting systems were showing targets in past, present, and future all at once. Sir, I have weapons lock on the entity, but I'm also locked onto where it was 5 minutes ago and where it will be in 10 minutes. Which version do I shoot? All of them, Lee realized. We're not bound by normal time anymore. Shoot all the versions. The Taeguk opened fire with weapons that existed in multiple timelines simultaneously. Plasma beams struck the Void Maw in the past, present, and future all at once. For the first time, the entity reacted to an attack, writhing as it experienced damage across multiple time streams. But the Void Maw struck back with attacks that targeted their existence itself. Instead of shooting at their ship, it shot at the mathematical equations that defined their reality. Crew members began blinking out of existence as the entity tried to edit them out of the universe. Dr. Young was working with the Veiltar to stabilize their existence. Captain, we need to anchor ourselves to something that can't be unmade. We need to become a fixed point in reality. How do we do that? Lee asked, even as he felt his own existence becoming uncertain. We become the guardians of the barriers between worlds, Dr. Jung explained. Instead of existing in one reality, we exist in the spaces between realities. The Void Maw can't unmake us because we're not entirely in any one universe for it to weigh. Edit. The transformation was painful and disorienting. The crew of the Teguk began to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They could see and interact with past and future versions of themselves. They could fire weapons before they decided to fire them and think thoughts that existed in several realities at once. Sergeant Major Yoon and his Marines were leading boarding parties against the Void Maw itself, fighting inside a creature made of non-existence. They used weapons that fired paradoxes and contradictions, confusing the entity's ability to unmake things by giving it logical problems it couldn't solve. The battle raged across multiple timelines and dimensions. The crew fought versions of the Void Maw that existed in the past and future, while defending against attacks that tried to prevent them from ever being born. But as the fight continued, Dr. Young realized something terrible. "Captain, destroying the Void Maw completely might unravel all the quantum modifications that let us exist in this space. We could end up erasing ourselves from all timelines." Lee understood the choice they faced. They could destroy the Void Maw and save the universe, but it might cost them their existence across all realities. Or they could find another way to stop it, but risk letting it continue its destruction. The fate of multiple universes hung in the balance, and the crew of the Teguk had become something beyond human to fight for humanity's survival. Captain Lee made the hardest decision of his life while existing in multiple timelines at once. In some realities, he chose to destroy the Void Maw completely. In others, he found different solutions. But in the timeline that mattered most, he chose something unprecedented. "We're not going to destroy it," Lee announced to his crew across all dimensions of existence. "We're going to contain it. The Teguk will become a quantum anchor, a seal between realities that keeps the Void Maw trapped." Dr. Jung understood immediately. "Captain, that means we'll have to exist permanently in the spaces between universes. We'll become guardians of the barriers between worlds. We can never go home." The crew processed this information while fighting battles across multiple timelines. They were no longer entirely human, but they were still human enough to understand. Sacrifice. One by one, they agreed to the plan. Chief Engineer Kim began the final modifications to their ship. The Teguk's hull became translucent, then partially invisible, as it began to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. The reactor didn't just produce energy anymore. It produced possibility itself, the raw material from which realities were made. "All crew, prepare for quantum anchor deployment," Lee announced. "We're about to become something that has never existed before, a living seal between universes." The battle reached its climax as the Void Maw realized what they were planning. It struck at them with attacks that tried to erase their past, present, and future all at once. But the crew of the Teguk had learned to exist in ways that transcended normal time and space. Lieutenant Commander Park was navigating not just through space, but through the currents of possibility themselves. He guided the Teguk to the exact center of the confluence, where all realities touched each other. Here, they could create a permanent barrier that would hold the Void Maw without destroying it. Sergeant Major Yoon and his Marines made one final boarding assault, not to destroy the entity, but to place quantum beacons inside it. These beacons would monitor the Void Maw and alert other realities if it ever tried to break free. "Beacons in place, Captain," Yoon reported, his voice coming from multiple timelines at once. "The creature is contained but alive. It can't grow. Stronger. But it won't be destroyed either." Dr. Choi was amazed by what they had accomplished. "Captain, we've essentially created a new type of existence. We're not quite human anymore, but we're not aliens either. We're something entirely new. Interdimensional guardians." The transformation completed as the Teguk settled into its new role as a living seal between realities. The ship existed in all dimensions simultaneously while being fully present in none. The crew could see into every possible universe while maintaining their essential humanity. Young Ensign Kang laughed with delight as she discovered her new abilities. "Captain, I can communicate with versions of myself in other realities. There are thousands of different versions of our story, and in most of them, we succeed in different ways." The Veiltar's mental voice carried profound gratitude. "You have done something we thought impossible. You have not destroyed the Chaos Bringer, but taught it to exist in harmony with order. The Void Maw sleeps now, dreaming mathematical dreams." Instead of consuming realities, Dr. Jung was monitoring communications across multiple dimensions. "Captain, I'm receiving quantum messages from Earth. They know what we've done. Admiral Ban Siak Ho is coordinating with Earth's scientists to maintain contact with us across dimensional barriers." The connection to Earth was strange but real. The crew could send messages home, but they were no longer part of Earth's reality. They existed in the spaces between worlds, watching over the barriers that kept different universes separate and safe. Commander O was establishing new defensive protocols. "Sir, we're detecting other threats moving through the confluence. There are entities from dying universes trying to invade healthy realities. We're in position to stop them." Lee realized that their mission was just beginning. They had become humanity's first interdimensional embassy, protecting not just Earth but all realities from threats that existed between worlds. Weapons specialist Seo Yunbi was training with new weapons that fired concepts and ideas instead of energy. "Captain, I can shoot hope at despairing civilizations and curiosity at species that have stopped exploring. We're not just fighting enemies anymore, we're helping entire civilizations grow." The crew discovered that their new existence allowed them to help in ways they had never imagined. They could visit dying civilizations and teach them to adapt and survive. They could show rigid species the value of creativity and chaos. They could guide young civilizations away from the mistakes that led to destruction. Months passed, though. Time had little meaning for interdimensional guardians. New human ships began arriving in the confluence, volunteers who had learned to navigate the probability currents. Earth's space fleet was evolving, producing crews trained from the beginning to think in paradoxes and embrace the impossible. Captain Lee stood on his bridge, looking out at stars that burned in colors that didn't exist in normal space. His ship was simultaneously matter and mathematics, real and imaginary, present and eternal. His crew had learned to be human in ways that transcended any single reality. "Status report," Lee requested, though he already knew the answer from multiple timelines. "All realities stable, Captain," Park reported. "The barriers between worlds are holding. The Void Maw sleeps peacefully, and Earth's new interdimensional fleet is ready for their first mission." Kim's voice came from engineering, where she was working with technologies that combined human creativity with alien mathematics. "The ship is performing perfectly, sir. Our reality anchor is stable, and our dimensional engines are ready to take us wherever the universe needs guardians." Dr. Jung was studying readings from across the multiverse. "Captain, we're detecting distress signals from a universe where the laws of physics are failing. An entire civilization is trapped as their reality collapses. They need our help." Lee smiled, feeling more human than he ever had, despite existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Set course for the distressed reality. It's time to show another universe what humans can do when the impossible becomes just another problem to solve." The Taiguk moved through interdimensional space, carrying its crew toward their next mission. They were no longer just humans in space. They were humanity's gift to the multiverse, carrying the species' greatest strengths to places where adaptation and creativity were the only hope for survival. Behind them, the Void Maw slept in its quantum prison, dreaming dreams of mathematics and chaos working together in harmony. The confluence was safe, but more importantly, it was protected by beings who had learned that the greatest victory wasn't destroying your enemies. It was teaching them to be better. As the title had promised, after their arrival and transformation, nothing about existence itself was familiar. Not space, not time, not the nature of reality, and not even what it meant to be human. But in adapting to the impossible, they had become something greater than what they left behind, guardians of infinite possibilities, protectors of the spaces between worlds, and proof that humanity's greatest strength was not in conquering the universe, but in learning to belong to it in ways no one had ever imagined possible. The crew of the Taeguk had found their new home. In the vast spaces between realities, and the multiverse was safer because humans had learned to exist where existence itself had no meaning, and somehow, impossibly beautifully, they had made it work.